Number 5 is Hellsmite from the biblical proportion story over at Star-Crossed Comics, created by Joe Spicer, with the story currently being written by Evan David. So Joe has a thing for Nephilims. A lot of his stories include Nephilims. There's Starstruck the Nephilim, and then there's Hellsmite the Nephilim. I don't know what other Nephilim he has up his sleeve. We will be interviewing Joe in next month's installment of the podcast, and that's definitely a question I'm gonna ask him on what is his thing with all these Nephilims. But Hellsmite is this Nephilim from, I believe, the antediluvian period, because the Star-Crossed Comics stories seemingly take place in an interconnected universe, like one mainline universe for Red Talon, Black Blossom, and all other major Star-Crossed stories. They all take place within the same universe. The cool thing with Biblical Proportions issue 2, when they began to introduce who he is more, because issue 1, it was confused. His introduction in issue 1 was very, the way it was implemented, at least panel wise, it was really confusing. But in issue 2, it gave the character more backstory, that he was a Nephilim who ruled. They don't directly say it in the comic. There's a lot of things that are implied but not written out, and I just like to imply it, that he ruled as a god back then, because that's how they presented Zus, and Urg was in that battle against him. So that means it's around the same time as Zus. It was Urg and all that. You guys probably realize by now I'm a low nerd for any kind of fictional universe, even like as small as in comics we cover on the channel. So I dive a little bit too deep into the lore, even though there's not much there. A lot of things are left up to interpretation, kind of thing. They had an entire battle of those from way back then, which is we were dated 900 years before the flood. Around 900 years before the flood, you have all of these heroes that team up to take down Hellsmite, who was a big Nephilim that was ruling back then. And they killed him, but 2,000 years that's not 2,000 years later. That would be more than 2,000 years later. That would be about in the 21st century. In the 21st century, Hellsmite was resurrected by Lord Horn, which I think is another Antichrist archetype style character. That was a funny thing. I remember saying to Joe in a backstory that there's a lot of Antichrist in this within these stories, and I think one day I would do a Antichrist ranked type of out of all the Christian comics I'll cover, that probably might be a far future podcast or something, because there's only 3 so far, which to say a lot is like an overstatement. But there's like 3 different Antichrists, and we would rank all the 3 Antichrists and who I think is the best eventually. I kind of did it in this podcast too. Okay, so after really my train of thought, but mine kind of going everywhere looking at the script. But Hellsmite was resurrected by Lord Horn in the future 21st century, and when Hellsmite was resurrected, and they made sure, because they failed with the Nephilim resurrection procedure with Starstruck, so Starstruck became a hero. Even as a Nephilim, he became a hero or whatnot. But Hellsmite was the second iteration of the Nephilim cloning program, and this time around, when they did the cloning, they did their best to restore him with a lot of his memories at the time that he died, so that when he got resurrected, he wouldn't just go mad and try to break out and try to free himself and all that. He was like, they wanted him to be willing to serve alongside Lord Dark in whatever evil plan they have. I don't know what is the motivation of Lord Dark yet, but Lord Dark has an evil plan. Not Lord Dark, Lord Horn. Lord Horn, not Lord Dark. Every time I said Lord Dark, it's Lord Horn. But when they brought him into the future, he was looking for his Wormwood Scepter, which he didn't. He was looking for his Wormwood Scepter, which is what he had when he fought against the heroes. And realizing that he doesn't have his Wormwood Scepter, all their planning and everything that he would come back and side with us and whatnot went out the window, because he went mad looking for his Wormwood Scepter and began to just body everybody. put down Lord Horn. He fought everybody in the facility according to Biblical Proportions issue 2, and then he escaped out of the facility and disguised himself as Starstruck and then went tearing up the city and everything in search of his Wormwood scepter. And after doing all like tearing up, fighting against the heroes and everything, he had the big confrontation with Starstruck and all the heroes in Biblical Proportions issue 2, because when he got his hands on the Wormwood Scepter, from how it is written in Biblical Proportions, is this: it has the ability to, I think it will be explained more in issue 3 how it works, but it has the ability to rip through the different realms of the Starcross, not just the Starcross comics universe. Because what Biblical Proportions is, it's like a big collaboration of different faith-based and even non-faith-based indie comic stories, and it's just a big collaboration of all of them. And to explain it away, they just do it like these are different realms, different like universe. I call it the Christian multiverse, but it's not really Christian multiverse, at least the way it was portrayed from at least Starcross Presents. Is a really cool comic panel of Starcross Presents, like 3-page comic panel that like portrays the beginning of the Starcross universe with the Trinity and everything, biblically accurate, but in the form of multiverse creation. At least that's how it looked, like the infinite unknown of what is unknown to man, the possibility that they could be or they are multiverses, or they're not real, just like fictional, of course, fictional in the fictional context, fictional context, to showcase how all these superheroes from different realms on different earths could come together and fight against Starstruck. At least that's how it's written into the story of Biblical Proportions, for the sake of the Biblical Proportions concept and plot. So Hellsmite gets a scepter and he starts to tear a rift throughout the multiverse and all the heroes, and they begin to converge to eventually take down Hellsmite. And that's currently where the story is. The story ended with everyone getting a rendezvous point on where to meet up for further instructions, and Hellsmite getting his hand on the Wormwood Scepter and being prepared to really tear things asunder. That's where it is. But the concept of Biblical Proportions, though the execution was shaky at the beginning in issue 1, issue 2 was more like a ground the story kind of thing. In issue 3, we really know where it really going. But I really like the whole Christian, I call it Christian multiverse concept. It's not really a Christian multiverse concept, but most of the characters in it are from faith-based creators. Not all the heroes are Christian themed. Well, a lot of the heroes that appear, and then to name a comic Biblical Proportions and not be faith-based is kind of kind of like a shoot in the foot in my opinion. But it has been rather faith-based. I mean, we have Nephilims and stuff running around, wanted to tear the multiverse apart and all that. So yeah, that is Hellsmite. Really cool character that is currently being developed as I speak, because issue 2 just came out the other day, and issue 3 I think is coming out next year, if I'm not mistaken. So stay tuned if you want to know more about the Nephilim that is tearing the multiverse asunder.